All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We are so happy to have you here this Wednesday morning to talk about MiSSG and dive into data and student records. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Emily Hurtado Arboleta. I'm a member of the My Student Aid outreach team, and I kind of oversee high school services. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the MiSSG system. We're going to talk about data, the creation of a student record in MiSSG. We're going to talk about the impact of data exchanges with CEPI. And then we're also going to talk about the role that high schools play in ensuring that that student data is up to date. So we're going to talk a little bit about those things. I'm going to sprinkle in some conversation about data use agreements. So making sure that all of you are aware of how you get access to this data. And then we're going to talk timelines. So I'm going to be able to share a little bit of information with you about things that are happening at certain times of the year, this school year. I'm going to share some changes, some enhancements, some updates that have happened this year. And then, of course, along the way, if you all have any questions, feel free. You can drop those in the Q&A feature, that's right there on your taskbar there. So utilize that Q&A feature. I've got a couple of my colleagues behind the scenes that'll be checking in and looking to see and help answer some of those questions. But I would say hang tight. We're going to kick things off. And I may get some of those questions that you have answered pretty quickly as we start the presentation. So, first thing, I want to make sure everyone that joined today knows that if you did not put down your PIC number when you registered for this webinar, then you're going to need to send a separate email to sketch@micollegeaccess.org in order for you to get sketch credit. So again, if when you registered for this particular mini webinar training, if you did not include your PIC number, you're going to want to send a separate email to sketch@micollegeaccess to make sure that you receive sketch credit. So this is only if you did not put in your PIC number at registration. So I want to make sure that's clear. I think in our last webinar, we had everyone sending PIC numbers and emails to MCAN. So we just want to make sure that it's only those folks who didn't submit their PIC number when they registered. All right, so now let's talk MiSSG and some of that data that you all can see. So once you've gotten that DUA on file, some of that data that's available to you all as high school users. So you'll notice you'll have the ability to view student records. So things like FAFSA completion data for students at your school. You'll also be able to view TIP qualifying student data for students at your school. And that also includes a TIP qualifying student letter that's available right within the portal. And then you also have the ability to view your Michigan Achievement Scholarship qualifying students. So those students who submitted their FAFSA and had an SAI of 30,000 or less, those are the students that will display in the MiSSG High School Counselor portal. And then we're also going to have a Michigan Achievement Scholarship qualifying student letter that's also available for you all. Once we start getting those FAFSAs, you're going to be able to utilize that letter and provide that to any of those students who have received that SAI of 30,000 or less. And I will say some of these things, like some of the different functions and features in MiSSG, we're going to dive into in the next mini webinar training. So if I'm kind of touching on them now, but not going into detail, just know that it's in the next mini webinar that we're going to do a live demo, and I'm going to be able to show you how some of this data looks live in the high school counselor portal. All right, so how do you get access to MiSSG? Some of you on the call today maybe haven't had access to MiSSG. So we want to make sure that you know that process and what it looks like. So we want to make sure that you get what's called a DUA, or a data use agreement, for this school year on file with mistudentaid. And what we have up on your screen is it's a screenshot of the DUA for this academic year. And then also what we did was we kind of blew up a screenshot of section 3 of the DUA. And that's our data receiver designee section. So for any of you that are high school counselors, that's been your typical section, right? You've been put in that data receiver designee section so that you have direct access. You can log right into MiSSG. Now, there have been a couple exciting changes this year. So the big one is that we've now, and you can kind of see on the screen under section 3, this now includes not only employees of the high school, but employees of the ISD, the RISA, or the ESA. So if you all maybe have folks that work as part of your ISD, your RISA, your ESA, maybe these are folks that are working in like tech centers that see students from your school, maybe from other schools in the district, those folks can now get access to MiSSG. So if any of you that are joining us today maybe fall into that category where you're not necessarily placed in the high school, but you're doing work with high school students through your position, through the ISD, the RISA, the ESA in your district, we want to make sure that you all are aware of that and that you all are getting access to MiSSG so you can, of course, help increase awareness, help connect students to different resources like the Michigan Achievement Scholarship and the Tuition Incentive Program. Now, this DUA, it does need to be completed each year. So it's completed annually, and that document's also completed electronically. So please don't send handwritten DUAs. This can just really delay the process, and we want to make sure that everything moves smoothly for you when you're submitting that DUA. And the DUA has to be submitted electronically via your principal or superintendent. So for many of you, it's going to be your high school principal that's stepping in and that's completing this DUA. But a really important step, because we want all of you to have access to this valuable student level data that's in MiSSG, so that this can help you in some of that targeted outreach that you might be doing for students at your school that maybe have submitted a FAFSA but haven't completed, or TIP eligible students who haven't done a FAFSA yet, but you don't want them to miss out on that TIP money. We want to make sure that you're able to access this data, identify those students, and help, connecting them again to different resources that can help them kind of figure out what that post-secondary path might be. So we were talking through DUAs. You might be wondering, where is the DUA on our website? So I have up on the screen, circled up top, that's our high school counselors tab. So some of you may already be very familiar with our website and with that high school counselors tab, but that's where you're going to find a lot of helpful information in the work that you're doing with students and families. And you'll notice the red arrow on your screen. That's just just pointing right to a hyperlink that takes you right to the MiSSG High School Counselor Portal login page. So you can access it right through there. And you'll notice I put a second circle at the bottom of the screen around the 24-25 data use agreement. So if you're wondering, where do I go to find the DUA? Where is it located? It's right there under that high school counselor tab, MiSSG high school counselor portal. So feel free, check that out. We've got some other hyperlinks to some additional information. And if you're wondering why submit a DUA, what's the point of me doing this, right? So we wanted to give you a little bit of data that we compiled from 2023. So we're still compiling, still analyzing our data from our 23-24 school year. But for our 2023 grads, this is some of the data that we were able to pull based on DUAs on file, and then FAFSAs completed. So what you'll notice is that those two lines are trending together, right? They're trending upward. We've got that blue line that's showing the sum of DUAs on file, and the orange line that's showing the sum of FAFSAs completed. And what we noticed for our class of 2023 grads was that at high schools with no DUA on file, on average, only approximately 5% of 2023 grads completed a FAFSA. And then compared with high schools with a DUA on file, we saw on average approximately 43% of our class of 2023 grads that had completed a FAFSA. So really what this is just showing us is that schools that have a DUA on file are accessing our MiSSG system, and they're engaging more with the system. And so they're more likely, right, to use that data to help identify students at their school, where they're at in that FAFSA completion process. And then what we're seeing is more engagement with those students, thus resulting in more students completing that FAFSA. So again, this is just why we want to make sure that you all get access to the online MiSSG High School Counselor portal so that you can view the student level data and help support your students, again, as they're moving towards completing the FAFSA or just figuring out what might be that next step after high school. All right, so now we're going to talk MiSSG. I want to start first with just giving you a little bit of updates on the system. So important to mention that there's been a lot of moving parts in the MiSSG system this year. So basically through the summer and now into the start of the school year, what we've had kind of happening behind the scenes is a lot of things. We had some new programs to implement. Some of you were here, have probably heard about the community college guarantee. So we've been working, to get our system updated with some of those new changes, so that we can award students the community college guarantee money this fall. So that's been a big push, right, of what we've been doing with our vendor to make sure that we can get everything built out so it's ready to go. And then we've also had some updates and changes to existing programs, so such as our Michigan Achievement Scholarship 4-year pathway option. Some of you may have noticed that the award amount shifted. So our private colleges and universities, they're now awarding the same amount as our public schools are. So excited about that, but again, had to make sure that we were implementing those changes into our system so we could award those students this fall. And then we've also had improved data exchanges with CEPI this year. So we're revving up, we're preparing for this big exchange that's scheduled to happen with CEPI here in hopefully a couple weeks, fingers crossed. And so that requires us, and by us, I mean not only mistudentaid, but also our vendor behind the scenes, who's doing a lot with the online system and making sure that it functions properly, they're doing a lot to prepare for that big data exchange. So there's been a lot happening that maybe those of you that are joining us today haven't exactly seen, because a lot of this hasn't had an opportunity to go live just yet, because we're kind of ironing out those kinks, making sure everything's going to run smoothly for our students. But I would say, with these changes, it's also given us an opportunity to make enhancements to the MiSSG high school counselor portal side of things. And so that means more complete or robust student records are getting ready to come into the system. Also improved functions and features in the MiSSG high school counselor portal, and new and easy to find resources. So we're getting ready to implement, you may recall I touched on like our TIP student letter, our Michigan Achievement Scholarship student letter for any of those students who, again, submit the FAFSA and have that SAI of a 30,000 or less. You may recall we had a letter for them last year. What we've done this year is we've added 2 new student letters for you. And that's our Community College Guarantee student letter, and then also the Michigan Achievement Skills Scholarship student letter. So just trying to put more resources into the MiSSG system for you all, to just help you and be an extra resource for you all in that work that you're doing with students. So now that I've kind of laid the groundwork about some of those changes that have been happening throughout the summer and now into the fall here, I wanted to kind of talk through how a student record comes to be in MiSSG and what some of those exchanges look like. So what I have up on your screen is, you'll notice we've got CEPI enrollment data. We've got FAFSA completion data, and then we have tuition incentive program, or TIP, student data or student records. And so what's happening is, through us at mistudentaid, we're receiving and we're doing data exchanges with CEPI to help identify things like the high school that a student is attending. So that high school name, that high school graduation year for that student, 2 really important things, so that we're able to put them on the appropriate roster at your school, right? And then also CEPI UIC numbers for students. And this is also a really important thing, because again, just helps in that process of making sure we're connecting that student to the appropriate high school, to the appropriate grad year. And then what's happening after that is we're having additional data exchanges or matches with some of these other areas like FAFSA completion data. So once we start receiving FAFSAs from students in December, we're going to be doing some of that matching, right? Is this CEPI student, the CEPI UIC that we have for this student, is this the same student that we have a FAFSA now on file for? And then connecting those student records in MiSSG. We're also doing the same thing for TIP student records. So as TIP records come in, we're again doing some of that matching, some of that data exchanging to make sure, is this the same student? And then that's in turn helping to create a more complete student record in MiSSG. So just to give you an example, this happens often with students who have a TIP record. Because we know that students who are eligible for TIP, they may become eligible as early as 12 years old. Sometimes that TIP record is being created for that student at 12, but we may have high school name blank within that record. We may also have high school grad year blank within that record, right? So that student is so young that that information isn't available, right? They might still be in middle school, and so we don't know what high school they're at. That information's missing. And then also grad year, that information may be missing. So in that type of situation, we've got that TIP record, right? It's in our system, but it's waiting to kind of be connected. So we're looking to see, where's that CEPI UIC number for that student? and then trying to connect those two records so that we can use the data that we're getting through those exchanges with CEPI to make sure that we're identifying the appropriate high school and the appropriate grad year so that we can connect that student and then they're displaying in your roster. So a lot of these things are happening behind the scenes, right? These exchanges. But then there are also times during the school year where we're having big exchanges or large exchanges. So I wanted to show you kind of what that timeline looks like as we're doing some of these exchanges, not only with CEPI, but then also with FAFSA and with our TIP student level data that we're receiving from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So what I have up on your screen, this is that timeline starting, last month in August and then moving forward through the spring. So we wanted to let you know what are some of those bigger data exchanges that are happening and when are they happening so that you have an idea, when should I go into my MiSSG and maybe start looking to see, has any data shifted? Are there any new students listed in my student lists in my MiSSG? So when we kick things off in August, we did do a data exchange with CEPI because we wanted all of you, when you started off your school year, we wanted you to be working off the most up-to-date information that was out there, right? We wanted you to start the school year with that information. So that happened in August where we did that big data exchange with CEPI. And I think it's important, to mention to you too that CEPI is looking at data, K through 12. So when we say we're having these data exchanges, it's not just a couple records, right? Like this is a lot of student records. And so we're working with CEPI, of course, to pull over that 9th through 12th grade student data, but it's a lot of data that's being exchanged, right? So that can take a little while for us to receive that data and upload that data into my MiSSG. And it takes CEPI some time too, right? As they're collecting that data, analyzing that data, and then sending that, back out to us at mistudentaid. So that's August. We're doing that data exchange, right? Then you'll notice the second one. I know you're probably like, October, November, December. What's up with this? So this is something that we're doing with CEPI this year. We're pulling in some more student records of our 11th and 12th grade students, right? So we know that a lot of you are really focused on your seniors. You're probably also doing work with some of your juniors to make sure that they're getting a taste of what's to come for their senior year. And so I put on the screen October, November, December, because this is going to be such a large exchange with CEPI that we're just not sure what the timing of this might look like, right? It might be something that can happen, in a somewhat, quick time frame. It may be something that takes a little bit more time because we're also, again, working with our vendor behind the scenes to make sure, that everything's looking good, everything's displaying correctly, everything's matching correctly, right? That these fields that we're comparing are matching correctly in the system. So really, our hope is that this will all happen, fingers crossed, by December so that it can coincide with when FAFSA is released. So that's our hope. That's our goal. Of course, we don't know if we might encounter any hiccups along the way, but we'll cross those bridges when we get to it. But we wanted you to know this is coming, right? So, of course, once this has happened, we'll make sure that we're sending out usually one of our email blasts letting that updates happen, that info's in there. And what we anticipate is that you're going to go in, after this data exchange has happened, and you're going to see even more of your 11th and 12th grade students listed. Now, in November, this happens every year in November, we receive a file from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services that's letting us know and identifying who are all the TIP eligible students, right, across the state. So we're getting that TIP data file, and just to give you some perspective, in the past it's been over 100,000 to 120,000 like new tip records that we're uploading into our system. So that being said, for any of you that are going into MiSSG now, you may be going in, you may have already pulled your TIP student list. Maybe you're doing some outreach to your seniors. If you are, shout out to you. That's what we want you to be doing at My Student Aid. But also just keep in mind that in November, we're going to get that new TIP data file, and then we're going to upload that into our system. And usually that can get uploaded, I would say like by the end of November, early December, depending on how large that file is. And so we just really recommend that you all log back into MiSSG after November and look at those TIP student lists again. I know that December is a quick month with the holidays, so maybe after the new year, maybe once you're back in school, get into MiSSG, pull your TIP student lists again, because you may see new student names listed or displayed that weren't there at the beginning of the year. And that's just because we hadn't got that most recent file. So this is, again, just a really important timing thing, and making sure that you don't miss any students that maybe recently became TIP eligible, after we received that file in November. And then December, of course, as many of you know, that's when FAFSA is anticipated to open for students. And so we're rolling with that timeline. So we're anticipating that we're going to start receiving and uploading those 25, 26 FAFSAs in December. But I will say too, on our end, again, our vendor is, that may require some testing on our side, just making sure, again, that all of that information is coming in smoothly through the FAFSA. So it may not happen right away at the beginning of December, but once, the FAFSA is opened, that testing is going to happen for us. We're going to make sure those files look good, and then they're going to be uploaded right away into MiSSG. So we know how important all of that data is for you all, and we're going to work hard to make sure, that can happen as quickly as it can once FAFSA is released. So January is a really big one too for you all. So you'll notice this is when CEPI and fall enrollment data is captured. So some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, like fall data isn't captured until January. This is a really important piece, because we're doing those CEPI exchanges, right? And we're trying to find out what high school is the student at, what's their grad year, right? So that we can connect them to your school. What happens is you do your school count, right, in October, and then that is sent to CEPI. CEPI's got to spend time, right, collecting that data, analyzing that data, and then getting it all finalized. And usually by January, they've got that file fully finalized, and then it gets sent to us, and then we're able to capture that data and get it uploaded into the system. So this can take a little while, right? So in January, we're getting that fall count data. Some of you may be looking in your MiSSG, high school counselor portal. You might be looking in your student lists. In particular, right now, you might be looking at your TIP student lists and saying, why is this student listed? They no longer go here. Or why isn't this student listed? They go to this high school now. And I know they're eligible for TIP. And this could very well be because we are operating in the fall off of our spring enrollment data, right? So that's the most recent data that we've gotten from CEPI, right? And so in January, when we start getting that fall enrollment data, that's when you might see shifts, right? You're going to see shifts on some of your rosters because we're going to work off of what did that school report to CEPI during that fall school count data. So that's why it's really important that you all know that there is a little bit of delay, right, in that fall school count data getting to us because CEPI has to collect it, and then CEPI's got to analyze it and make sure it's all good and ready to come to us at MiStudentaid. And I think this also brings me to another important point, and it's a question that I get asked a lot. And that is, who oversees reporting CEPI school, school count data to CEPI? Like, who's doing that at my school? I get a lot of high school counselors and other staff that are in education asking me this. Who handles this? Who's in charge of that? So the big thing for you all is it might be really helpful to identify at your school who's in charge of keeping that CEPI school count data and who's in charge of reporting school count data to CEPI. It looks different across schools. Sometimes it might be the principal, it might be a data steward at the school, it could be like one of your executive secretaries who's handling that work. But I think it would be helpful for you all in your roles to know who is the keeper of CEPI data at my school, and then who also is responsible for reporting that data to CEPI. And I say all of that because what you see up on your screen about these timelines, and especially timelines with CEPI, is that we could be delayed getting that information from CEPI because CEPI is not receiving it in a timely manner from the school. So there could be delays happening in terms of that school getting that data and information to CEPI, and thus that's delayed getting to us at MiStudentaid. So I think it would be helpful for you all to know that. And I know it'd be helpful to know CEPI UICs for your students, because that's a piece of information that you all will need as you do student lookups in the MiSSG system. So I know I'm not going to talk about lookups today. That's next mini webinar, but I just wanted to throw that out there to you all as an important piece of info that I think will help you as you're kind of figuring out, okay, did this go to CEPI? Did we get it there, in a timely way, so that hopefully you're seeing that updated student data in January once we're getting that file from CEPI. And then in April, that's where we're gathering that CEPI spring enrollment data. So we're doing a big exchange with CEPI then to make sure that we can gather that spring count data, and again, make sure it's up to date once August hits, that we've got that most up-to-date information for your students. Now, you'll notice the 4 bullet points that I put at the bottom. These were just common questions that I found that I was getting asked a lot by professionals who were using the MiSSG high school counselor portal. So they were asking, how often is student data updated in MiSSG? Well, again, the student timeline, the student data timeline that you can see up on your screen, these are those big exchanges, right, that we're having with these different entities, right? CEPI, MDHHS, FAFSA. But then I think it's also important for you all to know that there are other exchanges that are happening behind the scenes, right? So we've got, weekly exchanges that are happening with CEPI where we're trying to get things like CEPI UIC numbers for students, right? Maybe we have a tip record, but we have no CEPI UIC number for that student, so we don't know how to connect those records. So we're doing exchanges with CEPI to see, hey, these are our students with no CEPI UIC. You have that UIC number. So there are exchanges that are happening behind the scenes, but these are these main exchanges that are happening. And I will say, CEPI data was usually a semester behind. So you're probably seeing this when you're looking at the timeline. There is that delay because they're collecting so much data. Then we talked about finding out like who oversees that school count data getting sent to SEPI. But then another big question that's come up this year has been what data is available now in MiSSG. So many of you, if you've gone into MiSSG already, you've probably noticed there's not a lot in here, right? And the big reason for that is because FAFSA hasn't opened yet. So when FAFSA is released, when it's opened in December, we're going to see a lot more student data displaying in MiSSG, right? But in the meantime, right now, you're probably seeing a lot of TIP student level data in MiSSG. And that's just because we haven't had this big exchange with SEPI, right? For our like 11th and 12th grade students, that's coming. And then also because we haven't started receiving FAFSA data yet. So if you're seeing a lot of TIP students, that's because, again, just haven't started receiving that FAFSA data to start filling in your FAFSA completion data. I also got some questions saying like, well, why can't I see my ninth grade TIP eligible students in MiSSG? And this is a really great question. So we're always within My Student Aid saying and encouraging you all to do outreach, let your TIP eligible students know as early as ninth grade if they're eligible for TIP. And some of you, if you're doing that work, awesome. We are so excited. That's exactly what we want. But if you're trying to look for your ninth grade students and you're not seeing any just yet, that's because we have that, the most recent SEPI exchange that would have happened with those students was in spring of their 8th grade year. So that's a big deal, right? Spring of 8th grade, they're still in high school. So we haven't even captured them yet in their fall of their high school ninth grade year. That's going to be captured in January, right? So we'll know about those ninth grade students, those ninth grade TIP eligible students. We're going to know their high school name, their grad year, and we're going to be able to connect them and display them once we get that SEPI fall enrollment data in January. So for any of you that are doing that work, that are focused on your ninth graders, I would say hang tight. You're going to see more that start to display once we get that fall enrollment data from SEPI in January. So that brings me to this. You're seeing a lot of TIP eligible students. Maybe you're wondering, FAFSA's been delayed until December. What can I do in terms of programming and getting my students ready for the FAFSA and thinking about the FAFSA? One thing that we're recommending from My Student Aid is that you request a TIP Talk event at your school. Some of you that are joining the mini webinar today, you may have had us come out to your school in the past for a Tip Talk event. But for any of you that haven't, what I have up on your screen are just some of the key things in scheduling that Tip Talk event. And we would really recommend, because FAFSA is being released later and it's not going to open until December, you could use this time in the fall to schedule Tip Talk events with our My Student Aid outreach staff, and we will come to your school. We'll meet one-on-one with your TIP eligible students, and we'll help them understand a little bit more about TIP and about how they can use that award at various institutions in the state and on various paths to post-secondary. So if you're looking for some of that programming, you can request an event at michigan.gov/MI and you'll notice you'll have a lot of different options. You can put in the date and time you're thinking, and then what'll happen is we'll circle back to you. We'll talk through logistics and getting everything set up to make your Tip Talk event a successful event. But this is something that we really recommend doing in the meantime, because this is a way that you can say to those TIP eligible students, hey, you're eligible for TIP. You've already got that benefit waiting for you, right? The next step is doing your FAFSA. FAFSA opens in December, and hopefully this will help connect the dots for students about the importance of completing the FAFSA. Another thing too, if you're looking for programming or things that you can offer in the fall leading up to FAFSA is Michigan Achievement Scholarship presentations. So you've heard me kind of talk a little bit about the Michigan Achievement 4-year pathway, the Community College Guarantee, and then there's also the Career Training pathway or the Michigan Achievement Skills Scholarship. So there are now 3 pathways under that Michigan Achievement Scholarship umbrella. And this is scheduling a Michigan Achievement Scholarship presentation is just giving your students an opportunity to hear about these various pathways. Now with the Community College Guarantee, there is no income requirement for this. So basically what this means is for our class of 2025 students that many of you are working with, once they graduate high school, they're automatically eligible for the Community College Guarantee. They just need to complete that FAFSA. So again, this is a way that we can kind of connect things for students by offering some of this programming in the fall as we're leading up to FAFSA, and then being able to say, hey, remember that Community College Guarantee that we talked about? You know, that award, that scholarship is there, but you have to do the FAFSA in order to be awarded that money. So, you know, hopefully this is something that you all can think about incorporating into your fall programming, and definitely reach out to us. We're also, open to doing like 2 things in a day. Maybe we do a whole presentation to your 12th graders, right? Maybe assembly style, letting them know about the Michigan Achievement Scholarship and these various pathways. And then maybe after that, we do tip talks with your tip eligible students for the rest of the day. So there's a lot of different combinations, things that we can talk through, flexibility in doing that. And we just want to, again, be an extra resource to you all. We know how much work you're doing. We know that you have a lot on your plate. So if there's anything that we can do to help bring these resources and increase awareness for students at your school, we want to make sure we're doing that. And certainly if we can get in there before FAFSA hits, that way, hopefully the students are remembering, I have to do that FAFSA. Now, I just wanted to show you the My Student Aid website. Again, you've got that high school counselor tab, but this is where you can go to request an event with us, like Tip Talks. This is also where you'll find our publications. You'll find our My Scholarship search tool. So that's going to be helpful as we're gearing up for fall and college application month and scholarship month. So definitely check out the My Scholarship search tool. We also have our webinars. So just a friendly reminder, we've got our next mini webinar that's going to be 2 weeks from today. And this is going to be our MiSSG system overview and walkthrough. So we're going to do a live demo of the MiSSG high school counselor portal. I'm going to be able to show you some of the functions and features in MiSSG, and then some of the ways that you can pull those tip student lists and view some of those resources that I touched on today, like those Michigan Achievement Scholarship letters. And we encourage you to register for multiple mini webinar trainings. You can earn sketch credit for this, so we want to make sure that you can earn sketches. And if for any reason you can't attend the webinar that we have scheduled for that day, we're going to put the recording up after our webinar so that you can view it. You can't get sketch credit for it in that sense, but at least you can view it and see the information. I also wanted to just touch on that we're offering our virtual financial aid nights again this year. So if you're looking for programming for your students, for your families, definitely direct them to our webpage where we've got all of this information, including the registration links. And then I'd also point out, notice on October 16th, December 18th, we're offering some of the financial aid 101s in the daytime. So for those of you, that are looking for programming during a school day, maybe you want to pull in all your seniors to have them learn a little bit about financial aid and what's to come with FAFSA, then definitely tune in for and register for one of those sessions. And I will say for these webinars, our financial aid 101s and our Michigan Achievement Scholarship webinars, if you register for the webinar, but you can't attend the day of, that's okay. We send everyone who registers for our webinar a copy of the slide deck and a copy of the recording. So just like our Financial Aid 101 webinars, we're also offering Michigan Achievement Scholarship webinars. So these are just informational webinars to help students and families understand a little bit more about the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. So again, you're looking for some of that programming or you're looking to connect students to this information, definitely let them know about our virtual webinars that are taking place this fall. And then shout out to our partners at MCAN, the Michigan College Access Network. In case any of you hadn't heard, they're going to have their 2024 MCAN conference taking place in November on the 6th and 7th at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. And sketch credit is available for both college and career. So if any of you haven't registered yet, or maybe you've never been to the MCAN conference, I would just say it's a really great conference, a really great opportunity to hear about some different topics, different initiatives that are happening throughout the state, all around kind of post-secondary attainment, and just a lot of good sessions. And again, the opportunity for you all to earn sketch credit. So definitely check out the MCAN conference. And then I'm going to stop here. I know I gave you all a lot of information, but any questions? I know folks were dropping them in the Q&A already. Doesn't look like we have any right now. So I ended right at my 46-minute mark. So I don't want to keep you all any longer, but I want to thank you for joining us today. Please join us for our next mini webinar where we're going to dive into the MiSSG High School Counselor Portal, and we're going to do an overview of all of the different functions and features that are available within the portal. So I hope today this shed a little bit of light on student records in MiSSG, when some of those data exchanges are happening, and when you all are going to see some of those changes to student level data that's displayed in MiSSG. But I hope you found it helpful. I'm wishing you all a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks at our next mini webinar. All right, everyone, take care.